In the name of the one living God. Amen. I guess it could be true in any time or any place that the metaphorical image of God as a human parent could be fraught. But I think especially in our time and place, we're so attuned to a therapeutic view of families and relationship dynamics that it's easy to push the metaphor too far, push it to places where it doesn't work. Like when we carry our awareness of the flawed humanity of human parents into our experience and understanding of God. And there are enough of us out here in the world with unreliable parents, or worse, that the metaphor doesn't always reflect well on the God of universal, unconditional love. But one place where the metaphor does tend to work is in the universal fact that parents can be maddening, and so can God. And if you are fortunate enough to have had a wise and loving parent, in fact, even if you won the lottery and won the parent lottery and ended up with two wise, loving parents, you probably know that wisdom and love don't necessarily make parents any less maddening. One of my earliest memories of my own mother's maddening wisdom was of a day when I was about 6 years old. I might have been 5, no more than 6. My mother had done something, I have no idea what it was, to infuriate me. In my memory, we were the only ones at home. The windows were open all over the house. It was a perfect, brilliant, warm day. And the weather only served to make the situation worse, because who wants to be upset and screaming and crying on a perfect spring day? But whatever I was mad about became so explosively intolerable that I finally screamed up at my mother's face that I was running away and never coming back. To which she replied, "Oh gosh, well, be careful out there, I'll miss you." This threw me off my game. I was perceptive enough to understand that she did not believe that I would be leaving and never coming back. I was not perceptive enough to really understand how appealing the absence of this screaming, sniveling, spoiled 6-year-old might have been on this beautiful day, but I figured I'd show her, so I went to the closet. I literally got out my little suitcase that I used to use for trips to visit grandma or whatever, and I packed it with clothes, and I showed her that I was packed and ready to go, suitcase in hand, and she said again, "Okay, be careful, I'll miss you." Now, I was physically capable, even at the age of 5 or 6, of carrying that little suitcase out the front gate and on down the sidewalk. But I didn't do that. I don't remember what I did next. I know I gave up, but I don't remember how I gave up. I don't remember how the thing got resolved. But I do remember contemplating the sidewalk, the traffic, the bus stop, and coming face to face with the reality that it was essentially impossible for me to exist beyond the boundary of that gate, of the home and family in which my entire identity had its shape and meaning. So my point is not that the almighty God of the whole cosmos is really just a lot like a nice professional class suburban mom. My point is that our identity as human creatures is circumscribed by a boundary. The boundary of our relationship with God, just as surely as a young child's identity is circumscribed by the adults in his life. The so-called prodigal son, whatever his intentions might have been, never crossed that boundary. He didn't go out of some gate and cross into some land that lies outside of God's love, because there is no such boundary. There is no such gate. We can scream at God, we can say we're running away. There's no boundary that will deliver us out of God's jurisdiction. An older priest I admired as a young man used to say that, well, we all have our favorite heresies, and that his was universalism. I really appreciated the permission that he gave from his position of authority to opt for universalism in spite of ample biblical testimony about the saved and the damned, the sheep and the goats, the favored and the disfavored. But to be honest, I've never for a moment at any time in my life been comfortable with anything other than universalism. It took me a while to get to the foundational theological principle, though, the one that holds that whatever we might mean by a term like salvation, it must necessarily apply to all, because to hold otherwise is to claim that God, whose love for all people made in God's image is infinite, and whose purpose is the reconciliation of all things, might actually be defeated. That we, by our sin or our stubbornness or our wiles, might actually be powerful enough to thwart the will of God in the long run. That's the heresy. And there's ample evidence in our sinfulness and stubbornness. If we were capable of defeating once and for all the will of the loving God, we would have done it a long time ago. God knows we've tried. But that heresy about the favored and the disfavored, the saved and the damned, and our control of our own eternal destiny has worked its way into our reading of this parable. Because we hear it as we've got two sons, and one of them crossed that boundary and the other did not. And I don't know if you've been, as I have, in Bible studies where the question gets asked, so which son do you identify with? This is our therapeutic family systems worldview, in which it's actually kind of fun, if you've never done it, to sit in a room and realize that there are people around the table who are astonished to find out that anyone could identify with the other son who's not the one they identify with. The problem is that either way, whichever son you think you are, either way, the interpretation only leads you to a task of self-improvement. It just leads us to work on ourselves. Either we're the younger son who was wasteful and left and disrespectful. We need to shape up, improve ourselves, get back to the fold. Or maybe we're the obedient, rule-following, martyr-like older son, and then we need to work on our judgment, stop being so martyr-like and judgmental. But the thing is that the story is not ultimately about us. The story is about God. The reason that my 6-year-old self was safe and sound in my loving home that night is not because I had the good sense or the admirable virtue or the moral fortitude not to go out that gate and down the street. And in that same way, the reason that we are held in the love of God is not because of our own choices. And it's definitely not because of the way our choices compare to someone else's. It's definitely not because of birth order either. We don't walk out of God's gate because with God there is no gate. The whole framework of our being is inside the realm of God's love. So we usually jump right in because we want to get to the family systems. We want to get to which brother we are. And we overlook the beginning of this little passage, which says, all the tax collectors and sinners were coming near to listen to Jesus. And the Pharisees are grumbling. The Pharisees and the scribes are grumbling about these sinners and tax collectors drawing near. What if it were not so? What if the sinners and the tax collectors did not draw near? Then we would be setting up the boundary, and we've tried to do that many times over the generations too. We try to set up a fence and we say, okay, we'll be in here with God. But we don't get to do that. And God doesn't set up a fence. So Jesus tells the Pharisees and the scribes a story, not about two brothers, but a story about God. If Christian faith is about the recognition, the celebration of the fact that our life is in God's life, and that God's life is in our lives, then maybe we should stop worrying about which son we might be, which is the activity of work and self-improvement. And instead, think about the father in the story who, by the way, never tried to stop the son. The older son says later in the story, he says, well, I've obeyed you every day, and that so-and-so. But in fact, the father didn't tell the younger son not to go. He gave him what he asked for, and off he went. And there's a serenity in it, because the father in that parable knows that there's nowhere the son can go to get away. And so when we think about the life and love of God within us, we have the opportunity to reflect on the patience and the serenity of that father in the parable, believing that the good that is over the horizon that he cannot see will come, to live in the joyful expectation of the unseen good that is to come. Amen.